Betrayal. Elyra chooses between love and her people, who will sacrifice. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like if love didn't come from the heart, but from the stars above? What if, one day, a being from another world reached out to you not with words, but with a connection so powerful that it defied everything you thought you knew about love? Could you truly love something or someone who wasn't human, or would the differences between you tear you apart? Picture this: on a stormy night, as the rain beat relentlessly against my window, I received a strange message. It wasn't from a friend or a familiar voice, but from a place far beyond anything I could comprehend. And that moment marked the beginning of a love story, one that would bridge the impossible gap between human and alien. Across the vastness of the universe, where stars flicker like forgotten whispers, two worlds are destined to meet, not through radio waves or space probes, but through a love that defies all definitions. How can we build a bridge from heart to heart, across a distance no technology can ever reach? The answer lies in the love between a human and an alien, and it's a love that will make you question everything you thought you knew about connection. But can we ever truly break the boundaries of the cosmos? Or will the distance between us be too great to overcome? Stay with me until the end, because the answer to that question could change the way you see love forever. In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars twinkle like gems in a dark, endless sky, there lies a planet unlike any other. Aseria, with its glowing forests and shifting sands, is a world of both wonder and danger, its inhabitants gifted with abilities beyond human understanding. Among these beings is Elyra, a mesmerizing alien with emerald green skin, large, luminous purple eyes, and flowing white hair that sparkles with the light of her home world. She is not just a leader of her people, but a symbol of their culture's strength, elegance, and hidden power. Dressed in a sleek, form-fitting attire that hugs her curves, subtle yet daring, she exudes an aura of both mystery and dominance. Her pointed ears, the signature of her kind, stand as a reminder of the alien world from which she hails. In contrast, there is Ryan, a human from Earth, who stands tall and strong with a muscular build sculpted through years of intense training. His sharp blue eyes are filled with curiosity, determination, and the quiet confidence of a warrior. His black hair, neatly styled, adds to his commanding presence as he dons his advanced, high-tech suit designed to withstand the harshest environments and protect him from the unknown dangers of the universe. As a seasoned space explorer, Ryan is used to the unpredictability of the cosmos, but nothing could have prepared him for the strange and enchanting encounter that awaits him on Aseria. The two worlds collide when Ryan's spaceship, malfunctioning during a routine mission, crash lands on Aseria. Alone and injured, he finds himself in an alien world, one that pulses with life, yet brims with danger at every turn. As he stumbles through the desert, fighting the oppressive heat and the creeping shadows of Aseria's strange creatures, he encounters her Elyra. The moment their eyes meet, the connection is immediate, undeniable. Elyra had been drawn to the crash site by a strange, unexplained energy. As she watches Ryan struggle to rise to his feet, she is struck by an emotion she has never experienced: compassion. The alien language is lost on Ryan, but Elyra communicates through her psychic abilities, gently probing his thoughts and emotions. She feels the vulnerability of this human, a stark contrast to the cold power of her own kind. And yet, beneath that vulnerability, There is something magnetic about him. His presence stirs something within her, an urge to protect, to understand, to explore the possibilities of what might unfold. Ryan, though initially confused and cautious, can't help but be captivated by Elyra. Her beauty is otherworldly, her eyes shimmering with ancient wisdom and raw power. There's an electric pull between them, something deeper than mere attraction. But Ryan knows that his life on Aseria is in the balance, and the presence of Elyra, with her strange abilities and alien ways, could be either a blessing or a curse. As Elyra steps closer, the air seems to hum with an invisible force. The subtle scent of her presence, a mix of floral and electric ozone, wraps around Ryan, making his heart race in a way he can't explain. His body reacts instinctively, heightened senses, sharper focus. This alien woman, standing before him, feels like a force of nature. Her very being commands attention. But Elyra is not just a beautiful alien, she is a leader, burdened with the responsibilities of her people. In her, power and grace collide, yet she senses a deep conflict within Ryan, a human who does not belong in her world. Still, their bond is undeniable, and a strange curiosity begins to form between them. What is this connection? What draws them together, despite the vast chasm that separates their worlds? As they stand there, words unspoken, the universe seems to hold its breath. The forces at play between them, power, mystery, and fate, are only just beginning to unfold. And what seems like a chance encounter may very well be the start of something far more profound. Ryan's mind raced as he stood before Elyra. The intense pull between them was undeniable. Her eyes, glowing with an almost otherworldly light, seemed to pierce through the very core of his being. Despite the overwhelming heat of Aseria's desert sun, the air around them hummed with a strange energy, something neither of them fully understood but both could feel. Elyra tilted her head, her pointed ears twitching slightly as she sensed Ryan's confusion and awe. The alien landscape around them appeared to fade as she focused on him, a subtle psychic connection beginning to form. She could hear his thoughts, not in words but in emotions, raw, unfiltered. Fear, wonder, a burning curiosity. His mind was a maze of questions, each more intense than the last. Yet, there was something else in his thoughts, something that intrigued her even more. Beneath his human exterior, beneath his vulnerability, Elyra could sense a quiet strength, a resilience that mirrored her own. Human, Elyra spoke softly, her voice melodic yet commanding, the words resonating in Ryan's mind rather than through the air. You are far from your home, lost in a world you do not understand. Why do you seek to survive? Ryan blinked, momentarily stunned by her telepathic voice. He had read about alien species with psychic abilities, but nothing could have prepared him for the intimate, invasive feeling of hearing someone else's thoughts in his mind. He opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. The world around him felt like it was closing in, and Elyra stood there, her presence towering over him, both beautiful and terrifying. I didn't mean to be here, Ryan finally managed to say, his voice low. My ship crashed. I had no choice but to land. And now I'm stranded. Elyra's eyes softened, the sharpness of her gaze momentarily replaced by a flicker of empathy. It was a rare thing for her to feel for another being, but there was something about Ryan that awakened emotions she thought long buried. His vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was a reflection of the fragility she had long suppressed in herself. He wasn't just another human to her, he was someone she was inexplicably drawn to. She took a step closer, her presence making the air around them feel thicker, more electric. The scent of ozone and lavender filled the air, a unique fragrance from the plants of Aseria, but it mingled with something distinctly human in Ryan, an earthy, familiar musk that made Elyra's pulse quicken. As she closed the distance, Ryan could feel the magnetic pull between them growing stronger. His body responded instinctively, his muscles tensing, his heart beating faster. The warmth of her proximity was intoxicating, and yet he knew he couldn't allow himself to be swept up by her beauty and power. He had to focus, to survive. "Where are we?" Ryan asked, his voice tinged with both awe and wariness. He had no idea how he was supposed to navigate this alien world, but Elyra's presence seemed to promise some sort of guidance. Even if he didn't understand her, he needed her help. His survival depended on it. "We are on Aseria," Elyra replied, her voice calm but with an underlying authority. "This is my world. And now, it is yours as well." The weight of her words settled over him. Ryan had never imagined that a crash landing would lead him to a world like this, let alone one with inhabitants like Elyra. She was a mystery, and yet everything about her felt like a puzzle he was both terrified and fascinated to solve. But beneath her calm exterior, Elyra was grappling with emotions of her own. She had never encountered a human who had such an effect on her. She had heard of their kind, weak, fragile, prone to destruction. And yet here, before her, stood Ryan, a human, yes, but one who seemed to carry an inner fire, a quiet strength that mirrored her own more than she was willing to admit. Ryan felt the weight of Elyra's gaze, her presence pressing in on him, and he couldn't deny that her beauty was unlike anything he had ever seen. The way her skin shimmered in the sunlight, the ethereal glow of her violet eyes, the delicate curve of her lips, it was almost too much to process. But there was something deeper, something primal about the way she made him feel. It wasn't just attraction, it was as though she had reached into him, pulling out emotions he had buried deep within himself. "I don't belong here," Ryan admitted, a tinge of regret in his voice. "But I can't just leave. I need help." Elyra's eyes softened again, her lips curling into a faint smile. The intensity of their connection was undeniable. She could sense his confusion, his helplessness, but she also sensed something else. Something he wasn't fully aware of yet. "You will learn, human," she said, her voice taking on a tone of promise. "Perhaps more than you realize." As Ryan stood there, feeling the weight of her words, something shifted between them, something that went beyond their words, beyond their worlds. Elyra's psychic abilities were like a beacon to him, and in turn, his determination, his resilience, spoke to something deep within her. The space between them seemed to shrink as they stood there, on the precipice of something neither of them fully understood. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: their paths were now entwined, and the journey ahead would challenge them both in ways they could not yet fathom. But for now, as the wind shifted the sand beneath them, the only thing that mattered was the present. And in that moment, as their eyes locked, Ryan and Elyra both knew that this was only the beginning. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow across the shifting sands of Aseria. The air was cooler now, but a subtle tension hung between Ryan and Elyra, palpable, like a current running just beneath the surface of their interaction. There was a strange chemistry between them, something neither of them could quite define yet both felt deeply. Ryan found himself unable to look away from Elyra. Her beauty was otherworldly. Every movement she made, every glance she cast in his direction, seemed to radiate with a quiet power. Her violet eyes shimmered with a deep, almost mystical knowledge, and her presence was like a force that pulled him in. She was both alien and familiar, a paradox he couldn't quite reconcile in his mind. For Elyra, it was no different. The human, Ryan, stood before her strong, determined, but also fragile in ways she had never expected. His human form, though different from her own kind, felt warm, comforting, almost inviting. She had encountered countless species throughout her life, but none had ever affected her this way. His energy, so raw and untamed, called to something deep inside her that she had long buried. His vulnerability, though unspoken, was apparent, and it intrigued her. What was it about him that stirred this strange feeling inside her? They stood facing each other in silence, the weight of their unspoken thoughts hanging between them. Elyra tilted her head slightly, the faintest hint of curiosity in her eyes. She could feel the pull between them, growing stronger, yet neither of them dared to cross that invisible line. It was as if some silent agreement had been made. Not yet, not here. You've never been to a world like this before, have you? Elyra's voice broke the silence, her tone soft but filled with an underlying strength. She wasn't just talking about the planet, she was speaking to Ryan's heart, to his very soul. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the awe, the confusion, and the deep curiosity running through him. Ryan hesitated before responding, his words careful, as though he were still processing the reality of it all. No, I haven't. I didn't expect any of this. I've been to a few different planets, but nothing like this. Elyra's lips curled into a faint smile, a small, almost imperceptible gesture that hinted at her amusement. She could tell Ryan was both amazed and overwhelmed by the alien world around him, and yet, she couldn't help but notice how he never once seemed fearful. He was a man of action, of resilience. His curiosity and determination were palpable, and in that, he mirrored the very essence of Aseria itself. The unknown can be a powerful thing, Elyra murmured, stepping closer to him. The air around them seemed to crackle with an invisible charge. Her presence was intoxicating, a magnetic force that drew Ryan in even further. But sometimes, the unknown is where we find what we truly seek. Ryan's heart rate quickened as Elyra moved closer. The scent of her, the heady mix of alien flowers and fresh ozone, enveloped him, and for a moment, he was overwhelmed by it. It wasn't just her scent, it was the weight of her gaze, the depth of her eyes that seemed to see into him, past the outer shell, into his very being. For the first time since his arrival on Aseria, Ryan felt a sense of vulnerability. It was as if he had been stripped bare in front of Elyra, and yet he didn't feel ashamed. Her presence didn't make him feel weak, rather, it made him feel alive. There was a connection between them that was undeniable, one that went beyond attraction or desire. It was deeper, more complex, a shared sense of something unspoken, something powerful. "You are different," Elyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "Your kind, your energy, it is unlike anything I've ever felt before." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The intensity in her words, the way she spoke as if she were touching the very core of his being, made him feel both exposed and enthralled. "And you're unlike anyone I've ever met," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "There's something about you, something I can't explain. It's like I'm meant to be here." Elyra stepped even closer, her body now inches from his. The temperature seemed to rise between them, the air thick with tension. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. The sounds of Aseria, the distant calls of alien creatures, the rustling of the strange, glowing trees disappeared, leaving only the two of them in their own universe. As their gazes locked, something shifted between them. Ryan felt an undeniable pull, a longing to close the distance, to feel the warmth of Elyra's touch. His hands, which had been clenched at his sides in nervous anticipation, now hovered at the edge of her skin, barely brushing against her arm. The contact was electric, like a spark igniting in the dark. Elyra felt it too, a rush of warmth, something deep inside her stirring in response to Ryan's touch. She had never allowed herself to feel this kind of connection. Her people valued control, distance, and power. But Ryan, he was different. He challenged her, made her question everything she thought she knew about herself, about the universe, and about the emotions she had long suppressed. The air around them was thick with unspoken words, their minds and hearts colliding in a dance neither could deny. Ryan's heart raced as his pulse quickened. Elyra's presence, her very essence, was becoming too much to resist. But Elyra, despite the magnetic pull, held herself back. She knew that to give in to this moment, this intense attraction, could alter everything. They were from different worlds, different realities. The future was uncertain, and the consequences of their connection could have repercussions neither of them could foresee. But for now, the world stood still, and in that suspended moment, Elyra and Ryan knew that whatever happened next would change both of their lives forever. The night on Aseria grew deeper, the sky now dotted with unfamiliar constellations. The soft glow of the alien moon bathed the landscape in an eerie light. Ryan had been silently walking beside Elyra for what felt like hours, still trying to process everything he had witnessed since his crash landing on this alien world. The vast desert stretched out before them, its shimmering sands shimmering under the pale moonlight, while the distant hum of alien wildlife echoed across the horizon. Ryan felt a sense of unease, not from the alien surroundings, but from the alien woman beside him. Elyra's presence was magnetic, drawing him in, yet at the same time, it was as if he were standing at the edge of an abyss. He wasn't sure whether to fall in or pull back. The connection between them was undeniable, but the reality of their differences, their worlds, their species, their very existence loomed like a shadow between them. "You've lived here your entire life, right?" Ryan asked, his voice breaking the silence that had lingered between them. His eyes scanned the alien landscape around them as he tried to reconcile the beauty of the planet with the strange, uncomfortable feeling growing inside him. What's it like? What does your world, your people believe in? Elyra's gaze shifted to him, her violet eyes flashing with a momentary curiosity. It wasn't often that she allowed herself to open up about her people, let alone to someone as different as Ryan. But something about his earnestness, his desire to understand, drew her in. She could feel the weight of his question. How much of herself would she reveal? How much was she willing to share with someone she had just met, someone whose presence stirred something within her she didn't fully comprehend? Our people are different from yours, Elyra began, her voice calm yet tinged with a quiet sorrow. We value strength, control, and purpose. Aserians believe in harnessing the power of the universe, mastering the elements and energies that bind all things. We do not seek the distractions of emotions or the chaos of relationships. We focus on the greater good of our people, the survival of our world. Ryan processed her words, his brow furrowing. It wasn't what he had expected. He had thought Elyra's people would be more like humans in some ways, able to feel love, connection, companionship, but her words spoke of a cold, detached society. The kind of society that had no room for vulnerability or weakness. And love? Ryan asked, almost as an afterthought. The question lingered in the air, heavier than he intended. Do your people ever love? Elyra paused, a faint flicker of something crossing her face. For the briefest moment, it almost looked like sadness. But it was gone so quickly that Ryan wasn't sure if he had seen it at all. Love, Elyra repeated, her voice quiet, almost introspective. It is not something we seek. It is a distraction. Our society requires focus. Attachment, it weakens us. Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment at her words. The idea of love, companionship, of something beyond mere survival, was something that defined so much of what he believed in. For him, love wasn't a weakness. It was the driving force behind everything he did, everything he fought for. But don't you ever feel? Ryan trailed off, unsure of how to phrase his thoughts. Don't you ever want something more than just survival? Don't you long for something deeper than power, than control? Elyra turned to face him, her expression unreadable. The air between them grew thick, the tension between their conflicting ideas palpable. I do not need what you need, Elyra said softly, yet firmly. We Aserians have learned to live without those emotions. We have learned to survive by mastering the forces around us. Relationships, feelings, they are unnecessary. Ryan couldn't hide the sadness in his eyes as he absorbed her words. He had come to Aseria expecting to encounter a strange and beautiful world, but now he realized just how vast the gap was between their cultures. He didn't know how to reconcile the Elyra standing before him, the strong, enigmatic woman with the power to bend the very universe around her, and the Elyra who might one day open herself to love. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their conversation settled between them, neither of them willing to bridge the gap that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Finally, Elyra broke the silence. Your people, they value connection, don't they? She seemed to choose her words carefully, as if testing the waters. You believe in love, in bonds, in partnerships. But do you not see how that is a weakness? How that makes you vulnerable? Ryan met her gaze without hesitation, his voice steady. I don't see it as a weakness. I see it as a strength. The ability to care for someone, to share a life with them, that's what makes us human. It's what makes us worth fighting for. Elyra was silent for a long time, considering his words. She didn't fully understand them, but she could sense the sincerity in Ryan's voice. The concept of love, of emotional connection, was foreign to her. It was something she had been taught to dismiss, to avoid. And yet, as she looked at Ryan, there was a flicker of something deep within her, a feeling she couldn't name, but one that she couldn't ignore. For the first time since their meeting, Elyra felt a shift within herself. It was as if she had opened a door she had long kept closed, and the world beyond was both terrifying and exhilarating. You are different, Elyra whispered, almost to herself. You challenge everything I know. Ryan smiled, though it was bittersweet. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was charged with possibility, with the unknown. They stood together, two beings from different worlds, their differences stark, but their connection undeniable. Neither of them knew what the future held, but they both knew that their paths had been forever altered by this strange, unlikely encounter. The days following their conversation were marked by an undeniable tension between Elyra and Ryan. While the world around them continued to pulse with the rhythm of Aseria's strange, alien beauty, something had shifted between them. Elyra, the fierce, confident leader of her people, found herself torn between her duty and the unsettling feelings she had begun to experience in Ryan's presence. His words echoed in her mind, love is strength, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized how foreign that idea was to her. Could such vulnerability actually be powerful? Ryan, on the other hand, was becoming more accustomed to his new surroundings. The beauty of Aseria, while captivating, couldn't distract him from the nagging feeling that Elyra's world, her way of thinking, was so different from his own. But despite the differences, there was an undeniable draw to her, a pull that he couldn't shake, no matter how hard he tried. Every time they were near each other, the air felt charged, and it made his pulse race. Today, however, was not about emotions or the growing bond between them. It was about survival. Stay close, Elyra's voice was sharp, her tone commanding. She led the way through the dense, glowing forest, her every movement graceful and fluid. We're entering the valley of the Calzari, creatures that only hunt at night. They can smell fear from miles away. Ryan's eyes darted nervously around the alien landscape. The forest of Aseria was unlike anything he had seen before, twisted trees with bioluminescent leaves and thick vines that seemed to pulse with life. The air was thick with the scent of strange flowers, and the ground was uneven, making each step feel uncertain. But it wasn't the landscape that had his attention, it was Elyra's command, her focused gaze, and the intensity that radiated from her. This was no longer just about their emotional connection, now, they had to rely on each other to survive. Ryan's heart rate quickened. He had fought on countless battlefields, faced dangers from all over the galaxy, but the unknown creatures Elyra spoke of filled him with a sense of unease he couldn't quite shake. As they walked, he couldn't help but wonder how much of this was a test. Elyra had already made it clear that she didn't believe in love, in attachments. But here, in the heart of Aseria's dangerous wilderness, their lives depended on one another. How would they survive this challenge? Would Elyra see him as a liability? Or was he becoming more than just an outsider in her world? The silence between them was thick, the only sounds the soft rustling of leaves and their steady footfalls on the forest floor. Elyra led them deeper into the valley, her eyes scanning the shadows. Ryan noticed the way her body tensed, her every movement calculating and precise. She was a woman of control, a being who commanded her surroundings. But beneath that composed exterior, Ryan could sense a flicker of uncertainty, something that made her more human in his eyes than she might ever admit. As they reached the heart of the valley, the temperature dropped, and a thick fog began to roll in. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, and Ryan could feel a strange pressure in the air. It wasn't just the environment, it was the growing presence of something unseen. The Kalzari were close. "They're near," Elyra whispered, her voice low and filled with tension. "Stay alert." Ryan instinctively reached for his weapon, a sleek, high-tech gun designed to protect him against the hostile elements of alien planets. But Elyra's hand shot out, stopping him. She turned to face him, her violet eyes filled with an intensity that left no room for argument. "You will not use that here," she said firmly, her voice a mixture of command and warning. "This is not a battle of weapons. It is a test of will, of control. The Kalzari will sense your fear. And if you are not careful, they will prey on it." Ryan looked into her eyes, realizing for the first time that Elyra was not just protecting him from the creatures, they were testing him. He was being forced to face his deepest fears and trust his instincts in a way that didn't rely on his usual tactics of combat and force. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. Could he do this? Could he survive in a world where control, not force, was the key to survival? But then Elyra moved, and without hesitation, Ryan followed her. Her steps were silent, graceful like a shadow slipping through the trees. He tried to mimic her movements, to match her composure, but the pressure around them was growing, thick with the anticipation of an attack. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. From the darkness of the mist, the Kalzari emerged, tall, sleek creatures with dark, reflective scales, glowing eyes, and long claws that clicked against the ground as they moved. Their presence was unnerving, and Ryan could feel the weight of their gaze on him, as if they were studying him, waiting for him to make a mistake. Elyra was calm, her body relaxed but ready. She moved to stand in front of Ryan, her hand raised in a gesture of command. The Kalzari stopped, their eyes locked on her, but they did not advance. "This is your test," Elyra's voice was barely audible, her words meant only for him. "Face them, without fear. Show them you are worthy of standing in my world." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The Kalzari were powerful predators, known for their ability to detect fear, to overwhelm their prey with their presence alone. But Elyra's words struck him like a shock wave. Worthy of standing in her world. Could he prove himself? Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped forward, his body steady despite the pounding of his heart. He could feel the Kalzari's eyes on him, could almost hear their thoughts, their calculations. But he refused to let fear control him. His body was a vessel of strength, his mind clear and focused. He would not fail. Elyra watched him closely, her eyes filled with both curiosity and pride. This was more than just a test of survival, it was a test of character. A test of whether Ryan could learn the strength she had mastered all her life. The tension in the air thickened, but Ryan stood firm. The Calzari did not move, as if waiting for something. Slowly, Elyra lowered her hand, signaling the creatures to retreat. The moment passed, and the forest seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating. Ryan stood there, heart racing, but proud of himself. He had faced the creatures without hesitation, without fear, and had emerged victorious. Elyra turned to him, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that was unmistakable respect. "You did well," Elyra said, her voice soft but carrying an unmistakable edge of approval. "You have passed the first test." Ryan didn't say anything at first. He simply nodded, his chest swelling with a sense of accomplishment. But the real test, he knew, was far from over. The days following their encounter with the Calzari had been filled with a strange kind of tension. Elyra had led Ryan through the wilderness of Aseria, their journey deeper into her world revealing more about the alien terrain and about each other. While Ryan had passed the test of strength and control, it was the emotional toll of their growing bond that began to weigh on him. Despite Elyra's calm, unyielding exterior, he could see the cracks forming. Beneath her icy composure, there were glimpses of a different Elyra, one who was more vulnerable than she let on. And the more he saw of her, the more he found himself drawn to her, not just because of her beauty or strength, but because of the quiet complexity that lay hidden behind her eyes. Elyra, too, found herself struggling with emotions she had long buried beneath the weight of her duties. Ryan was unlike anyone she had ever met. His resilience, his determination, his unwavering belief in connection, he challenged everything she had ever been taught. But it was more than that. There was a pull, a magnetic force between them that neither of them could deny, no matter how hard they tried. Their journey continued, but the moments in between the challenges were becoming more and more significant. Elyra had begun to notice the subtle shifts in Ryan, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, the way he moved closer, even in the face of danger. And for the first time, Elyra found herself questioning her own feelings, a confusing, exhilarating rush of emotions that she wasn't sure how to handle. One evening, as the twin moons of Aseria cast their glow over the valley, Ryan and Elyra found themselves standing on a high cliff overlooking the vast desert below. The winds had died down, leaving the air cool and still. The silence between them was comfortable, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something unspoken, but undeniable. "I never thought I'd be here," Ryan said quietly, his voice breaking the stillness. "I mean, I've been to a lot of planets, seen a lot of things. But none of them were anything like this." Elyra stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft, the edges of her usual detachment beginning to slip. "Everything about this place. The way it feels, the way it looks," Ryan continued. "But more than that, it's you. You're different. You're not like anyone I've met before." strong, powerful, but there's something about you that's vulnerable, too. I can see it in your eyes. Elyra turned her head, her violet eyes meeting his. The intensity in his gaze sent a shiver down her spine, and for a brief moment, she let her guard down, allowing herself to feel the weight of his words. She had never allowed herself to be this open, this raw, with anyone. But there was something about Ryan, something about the way he saw her, the way he truly saw her, that made her want to be more than the leader, more than the enigma she had spent so long hiding behind. "You are right," Elyra finally said, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I've spent so much of my life learning to control everything around me. My people, my emotions, my world. But now, with you, I feel things I've never felt before. And it frightens me." Ryan took a step closer to her, his voice low and sincere. "I don't want to frighten you, Elyra. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm drawn to you in a way I don't understand. But I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of you." For a long moment, Elyra said nothing. She simply stood there, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked at him. There was a warmth in his gaze, something genuine and real, that made her feel something deep within her, something she had buried so long ago. It was an unfamiliar feeling, one that scared her even more than the dangerous creatures of Aseria, and yet, it was a feeling she couldn't deny. Finally, Elyra spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "You should be afraid of me, Ryan. You should be afraid of the things I can do, of the power I wield. I come from a world where emotion is a weakness, and love is something we are taught to avoid. I was raised to be a leader, not a companion. Not someone who feels." Ryan reached out, gently touching her arm. The contact was electric, a spark that traveled from his fingertips to her skin, sending a wave of warmth through her body. Slowly, hesitantly, she turned toward him, and in that moment, she felt a shift deep within herself. She was no longer just the leader of Aseria, she was a woman, standing on the precipice of something she had never allowed herself to experience. "You make me feel things I've never felt before, Ryan," Elyra whispered, her voice trembling. "And I don't know if I'm strong enough to handle it." Ryan's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. He had never seen her like this, not in all the time they had spent together. She was always so controlled, so poised, but now, in the glow of the fire, she was laying herself bare before him. And he wanted to be the one to protect her, to show her that strength didn't have to come from control, it came from letting go. "You don't have to handle it alone," Ryan said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "You don't have to fight it, Elyra. Let it be. Let yourself feel." For a long moment, Elyra said nothing. She just stood there, looking into his eyes, searching for something in him that she hadn't seen before. Trust, perhaps. Acceptance. She had always thought that to be strong, to lead, meant to never show weakness. But in Ryan's eyes, she saw nothing but understanding, compassion, and longing. She couldn't resist any longer. Slowly, Elyra leaned in, her lips brushing against his, just a whisper of contact at first. Ryan's breath caught, his hand coming to rest gently on her back, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, as if they were both testing the waters of something neither of them could control but both wanted desperately. The world around them seemed to fade as their bodies pressed together, the warmth of the fire now lost in the heat between them. Elyra felt something stir inside her, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. She had always kept herself distant, detached. But now, in Ryan's arms, there was a freedom, a release, that she couldn't ignore. She let herself go, allowed herself to feel everything, the soft brush of his lips, the way his body fit so perfectly against hers, the connection that had been building between them from the very first moment they met. For Ryan, it was as if everything had led to this moment. Elyra, this powerful, untouchable woman, was finally letting go. She wasn't the leader of her people. She wasn't the stoic figure who ruled over her world. In his arms, she was simply Elyra, vulnerable, beautiful, and real. And for the first time, he felt like he wasn't just a stranger in her world. He was a part of it. The kiss lasted longer than either of them anticipated, but when they finally pulled away, their breaths ragged and their hearts pounding, it was clear that something between them had shifted. They were no longer just two beings from different worlds, unsure of where they stood. They were something more, something that could no longer be ignored. Elyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ryan's hand gently cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin. "Now, we face whatever comes next. Together." In that moment, Elyra realized that whatever the future held, whether they faced danger, war, or the unknown, they would face it side by side. Together. The night on Aseria was unlike anything Ryan had ever experienced. The sky above, though not like Earth's, stretched out with a deep, almost unnatural blackness, dotted with stars that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the heartbeats of the planet itself. The twin moons, a silvery orb and a dark, red-hued one, hung low in the sky, casting their otherworldly glow across the landscape. Ryan stood at the edge of a small cliff, gazing out into the vastness of the unknown, his mind racing with thoughts of Elyra and the connection that had grown between them. It had been days since their last conversation, days since they had shared a quiet, intimate moment on the edge of the valley. And yet, despite the peace of the night, the tension between them was palpable. He turned to find Elyra standing behind him, her silhouette framed by the soft light of the moons. She had been watching him for a while, but she had not said a word. It was as if the silence had become their unspoken language, a bond forged in the space between their words, in the shared glances and the subtle energy that hung between them. "Do you miss Earth?" Elyra's voice broke the silence, her tone softer than usual, almost vulnerable. Her gaze was focused on him, her violet eyes glowing in the moonlight, and for the first time, Ryan saw a glimpse of something more than the leader, more than the commanding presence that Elyra always carried with her. He saw someone who, despite her power and strength, longed for something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: connection. Ryan looked at her, surprised by the tenderness in her voice. It was rare to hear Elyra speak this way, and he wondered if it was the quiet of the night or if it was something more. His answer came slowly, a soft smile tugging at the corner of his lips as he turned back to look at the stars. "Sometimes," he said quietly, his voice carrying on the night breeze. "But not in the way I thought I would. I miss the people, the familiar sights, but I've never felt more alive than I do now. Even here. Even with everything that's so different about this place. It's like something inside me is awakening, and I don't know if it's the planet, or if it's you." Elyra stood still, her gaze fixed on Ryan. The words he had spoken, though simple, were powerful. There was sincerity in his tone, something raw and real that struck a chord deep within her. She didn't fully understand it, but she felt it. She felt the weight of his emotions, of the pull between them, and for the first time since they had met, Elyra allowed herself to acknowledge the depth of what was happening. "I don't know what to say," Elyra whispered, almost to herself. "I was never taught to understand feelings like this. My people are world, they value control, power. But you." She paused, turning to face him fully, her gaze unwavering. "You make me question everything I thought I knew about strength." Ryan stepped closer, drawn to her not just by the gravity of the conversation, but by the undeniable attraction that seemed to be pulling them together. He could feel the tension between them, the electricity in the air as their proximity brought them closer, their breaths now synchronized, just a few inches apart. "You don't have to understand it all at once, Elyra," Ryan said softly, his voice low, his words laced with meaning. "Not everything has to make sense right now. Maybe we're not meant to have all the answers. Maybe we're just meant to be here, together, in this moment. To experience something real, even if it's uncertain." Elyra's breath caught in her throat. She had never been this close to someone, not physically, not emotionally. Her entire life had been about distance, about duty, about the weight of her responsibilities. And yet, standing here with Ryan, feeling the warmth of his presence, hearing the sincerity in his words, something inside her stirred. Her gaze fell to his lips for a brief moment, and Ryan noticed. The tension between them was so thick now, so charged, that it felt like they were both standing on the edge of a precipice. Neither of them had ever been this vulnerable, but neither of them wanted to pull away either. Elyra's voice was barely a whisper when she spoke again. "And if this is just a moment," she asked, the vulnerability in her voice unmistakable, "what happens after?" Ryan reached out, gently cupping her cheek, the softness of his touch contrasting with the hardness of the world around them. "The moment doesn't have to end," Ryan said softly, his voice firm with conviction. "Then we live in that moment. We don't need to have all the answers, Elyra. We just need to feel it. To be here. To be real." In that moment, Elyra closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest as the distance between them finally closed. For the first time, she felt the weight of the world slipping away. It wasn't about control or power or what her people believed. It was about this, a connection that she couldn't deny, no matter how much she tried to resist. As Elyra opened her eyes, she found herself falling into Ryan's gaze. She could feel his warmth, his breath mingling with hers, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. With a quiet breath, she leaned in, her lips meeting his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if neither of them fully believed it was real. But as they deepened the kiss, the world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them, standing under the twin moons of Aseria, lost in the heat of the moment. The kiss was everything they had never allowed themselves to feel: vulnerable, raw, and real. It was a connection that went beyond words, beyond species, beyond planets. It was something they both needed, something neither of them could deny. When they finally pulled away, Elyra's hand found Ryan's, her fingers lacing through his, her heart still racing. There were no more questions, no more doubts. For the first time, Elyra understood what Ryan had meant all along: love was not a weakness. It was a strength, a force that could bind them together, even in the face of uncertainty. They stood there, under the stars, two beings from different worlds, but in that moment, it didn't matter. The universe was vast, unpredictable, but they had each other. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed the moment they shared under the twin moons were filled with an intense, undeniable tension. It was as if something had shifted between them, something neither Ryan nor Elyra could fully explain, but both could feel deeply. Their bond, once unspoken and fragile, had become more tangible, more real, with each passing hour. Elyra, once so confident in her control over everything, found herself struggling with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Ryan was different. His presence was both grounding and unsettling. There was an openness about him, a rawness that she couldn't quite understand but was drawn to all the same. And as much as she tried to push those feelings away, they kept pulling her back in. For Ryan, the struggle was just as real. Despite the alien world surrounding him and the strange circumstances, his feelings for Elyra had only grown stronger. He had always been driven by logic, by purpose, but Elyra made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. She was a leader, a force of nature, yet when they were together, she seemed vulnerable, human, in a way he had never expected. The emotional connection was one thing, but the physical attraction was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, as they made camp in a secluded valley, Ryan found himself watching Elyra more than usual. Her movements were fluid, graceful, as she tended to the fire, the flickering light casting shadows across her face. The way her long white hair shimmered in the firelight, the way her body seemed to glow under the alien stars, it was all too much. Elyra glanced up, meeting his gaze for a brief moment. Her heart skipped a beat. There was something different in his eyes now, something more intense, more focused. For a second, she saw not just the human stranger she had been trying to understand, but a man who had become more than that, more than just an outsider. A part of her wanted to pull back, to maintain the distance she had always kept, but another part, the part that she had been denying, wanted to close the space between them, to feel the warmth of his touch. Without a word, she stood and walked over to him. The fire crackled softly between them as Elyra knelt beside Ryan, her proximity making the air thick with tension. The scent of her, that intoxicating mix of ozone and something delicate, enveloped him. He could feel the heat radiating from her body, just inches away, and it made his pulse quicken. "You've been quiet tonight," Elyra remarked, her voice low, almost hushed, as she met his gaze. There was something in her eyes that Ryan hadn't seen before, vulnerability, maybe, or perhaps it was a silent invitation. Either way, it made his heart race. "I've been thinking," Ryan said, his voice rough. "About everything. About this place. About you." Elyra's breath caught in her throat at the intensity of his words. "What about me?" she asked, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. She wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer, but she couldn't stop herself from asking. Ryan's gaze softened, but his resolve was unwavering. "You're more than just a leader, Elyra. You're more than the strength you show to everyone else. I see it. There's something in you that you don't let anyone see, not even yourself." Elyra looked down, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected him to say that, and for the first time, she felt exposed. His words hit too close to the truth she had tried so hard to bury. She had always been the strong one, the one who kept control, the one who never let anyone in. But Ryan had already breached her walls without even trying. Ryan reached out, gently touching her arm. The contact was electric. Elyra's skin tingled beneath his touch, a sensation she hadn't felt in ages. Slowly, hesitantly, she turned toward him, and in that moment, she felt a shift deep within herself. She was no longer just the leader of Aseria, she was a woman, standing on the precipice of something she had never allowed herself to experience. "You make me feel things I've never felt before, Ryan," Elyra whispered, her voice trembling. "And I don't know if I'm strong enough to handle it." Ryan's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. He had never seen her like this, not in all the time they had spent together. She was always so controlled, so poised, but now, in the glow of the fire, she was laying herself bare before him. And he wanted to be the one to protect her, to show her that strength didn't have to come from control, it came from letting go. "You don't have to handle it alone," Ryan said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "You don't have to fight it, Elyra. Let it be. Let yourself feel." For a long moment, Elyra said nothing. She just stood there, looking into his eyes, searching for something in him that she hadn't seen before. Trust, perhaps. Acceptance. She had always thought that to be strong, to lead, meant to never show weakness. But in Ryan's eyes, she saw nothing but understanding, compassion, and longing. She couldn't resist any longer. Slowly, Elyra leaned in, her lips brushing against his, just a whisper of contact at first. Ryan's breath caught, his hand coming to rest gently on her back, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, as if they were both testing the waters of something neither of them could control but both wanted desperately. The world around them seemed to fade as their bodies pressed together, the warmth of the fire now lost in the heat between them. Elyra felt something stir inside her, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. She had always kept herself distant, detached. But now, in Ryan's arms, there was a freedom, a release, that she couldn't ignore. She let herself go, allowed herself to feel everything, the soft brush of his lips, the way his body fit so perfectly against hers, the connection that had been building between them from the very first moment they met. For Ryan, it was as if everything had led to this moment. Elyra, this powerful, untouchable woman, was finally letting go. She wasn't the leader of her people. She wasn't the stoic figure who ruled over her world. In his arms, she was simply Elyra, vulnerable, beautiful, and real. And for the first time, he felt like he wasn't just a stranger in her world. He was a part of it. The kiss lasted longer than either of them anticipated, but when they finally pulled away, their breaths ragged and their hearts pounding, it was clear that something between them had shifted. They were no longer just two beings from different worlds, unsure of where they stood. They were something more, something that could no longer be ignored. Elyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ryan's hand gently cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin. "Now, we face whatever comes next. Together." In that moment, Elyra realized that whatever the future held, whether they faced danger, war, or the unknown, they would face it side by side. Together. The quiet stillness of the Aserian night was shattered by a distant, echoing sound, a harsh, vibrating hum that rippled through the air, vibrating the ground beneath their feet. Elyra and Ryan stood in the clearing, their eyes locked onto the horizon where the light of the twin moons flickered in the distance. They had been traveling for days, navigating through the vast deserts and alien jungles, and though their bond had deepened with each passing moment, the weight of their responsibilities had also grown heavier. Elyra had been silent for hours, lost in thought as they moved through the strange, glowing landscape of Aseria. Her mind was preoccupied, focused on the ominous developments from her people. The Council of Elders was beginning to question her decisions. They had been monitoring her interactions with Ryan, and they had made it clear, if she continued her association with him, she would be placing her position and the future of Aseria at risk. Ryan could sense Elyra's shift in demeanor. He had been watching her more intently lately, noticing the tension in her shoulders, the way her lips were pressed in a tight line. He had asked her what was bothering her, but she had only said, "It's nothing." But now, as the humming sound grew louder, he knew it was more than nothing. Elyra was torn between the love they shared and the responsibility she held as the leader of her people. "Elyra," Ryan spoke, his voice low, filled with concern. "What's going on? What's happening with you?" She glanced at him, her violet eyes clouded with indecision. "Ryan," she began, her voice tinged with frustration, "I cannot keep running from this. You don't understand what it means to be in my position. I'm not just Elyra, the woman who what?" Ryan interrupted gently, stepping closer, his hand reaching for hers. "Who wants to love without restraint? Who wants to feel free? I know what you're going through, Elyra. You don't have to bear the weight of this world alone." Elyra's chest tightened, her heart racing. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that their bond was strong enough to survive whatever challenges lay ahead, but the reality of her responsibilities, the weight of her people's expectations, the future of her world, all of it pressed down on her. "I do want that, Ryan. I do," Elyra whispered, her voice breaking as she looked up at the stars. "But my people, they will not allow me to be with you. If I continue to defy them, to keep you close, they will see me as a weakness, as someone unfit to lead." Ryan's grip on her hand tightened. They'll see you as weak for choosing love? That doesn't make sense. It's not about love, Elyra said, her voice growing colder, as if to protect herself. It's about control, power. The elders want Aseria to remain strong. They believe I have lost sight of what is important. Ryan's heart ached at the pain in her voice. He had always known Elyra was strong, unyielding, but now he saw the cracks in her facade, the vulnerability that she had never allowed anyone to see. He reached out, cupping her face gently, his thumb brushing across her soft skin. You're not weak, Elyra. You're stronger than any leader I've ever met. The strength I see in you isn't about power, it's about how you care, how you protect those you love. You shouldn't have to choose between us. Not like this. Tears shimmered in Elyra's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away, refusing to show weakness. Duty had always come first in her life, and her emotions had always been secondary. But now, with Ryan standing before her, his hand on her cheek, she felt something shift. She couldn't deny the way he made her feel alive, free, human. And yet, she couldn't ignore the consequences of her choices. I don't want to lose you, Elyra whispered, the words finally escaping her lips. But I have to protect my people, Ryan. If I let myself fall further, if I allow this to continue, I risk everything. Ryan stepped back, his hands slowly lowering from her face, his mind racing. This was at the crossroads he had known was coming. The choices before them seemed impossible. He had always fought for what he believed in, for those he loved, but he couldn't ask Elyra to sacrifice everything for him. You're right, Ryan said, his voice strained. You can't ignore your people. But that doesn't mean you have to give up on what makes you human. What makes you real? Elyra shook her head. I don't know what to do anymore, she admitted. My people won't accept this. They've already begun to question my loyalty. If they discover that she paused, looking away, unable to finish her thought. Ryan stepped closer again, this time pulling her into his arms, holding her tight. The physical closeness, the warmth of his embrace, was the only thing that seemed to calm the storm inside her. She allowed herself to lean into him, for once letting go of her responsibilities, if only for a brief moment. I'll stand by you, Elyra, Ryan whispered into her ear. Whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. But you need to make the choice. If you want me, if you want us, then we fight for it. Together. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. Elyra could feel the truth in his words, and for the first time, she realized something. She didn't have to face this alone. But it would take more than just her strength, it would take everything she had, and everything he had, to break free from the chains of her responsibilities. I don't know what the future holds, Elyra said softly, but for the first time, I'm ready to fight for something that's mine. For us. Ryan's heart lifted at her words, and he pulled her even closer. He didn't know how this would end, what trials awaited them, but in that moment, he didn't care. All that mattered was that Elyra had chosen. And so had he. As the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the night air, a new resolve filled their hearts. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. The atmosphere on Aseria had shifted once again. The stars above, once distant and foreign, now felt like they were part of their journey, a witness to the path Elyra and Ryan had chosen. The quiet hum of the world seemed to pulse in time with their hearts, and the landscape both alien and beautiful had become their shared canvas, the backdrop for a love that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. Elyra stood at the edge of the council's meeting chamber, her back straight, her gaze unwavering as she faced the gathering of the elders. The room, built into the heart of the towering crystalline structures of Aseria's capital, hummed with power. It was the place where decisions were made, decisions that shaped the future of her people. Today, however, it was the moment of her reckoning. She had chosen. The decision she was about to make would forever change the course of her life and Aseria's future. She had fought the feelings for so long, but in the end, she knew that love wasn't a weakness. It was the strength she had been seeking all along. Ryan was standing behind her, his presence a steady support, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He didn't need to speak. His support, his unwavering belief in her, was all she needed. He was there, standing by her side, not just as a human from Earth, but as her partner, her equal. The elders were silent, waiting for Elyra to speak, to explain her actions. The tension in the air was thick with anticipation. They had never seen Elyra like this, vulnerable, but determined. They had known her as the unyielding leader, the one who always did what was best for her people, no matter the personal cost. But today, she stood before them as someone entirely different, someone who was no longer afraid to embrace what she felt. "You know why I have called this meeting?" Elyra's voice echoed through the chamber, steady but filled with emotion. "For too long, I have allowed fear to control my choices. Fear of failure, fear of weakness, fear of love. But no more. I have chosen my path, and I will not let it be dictated by those who fear the unknown." The elders exchanged glances, murmurs rippling through the room. The leader of the elders, Orin, a tall, stern figure with silver eyes, stepped forward. "Elyra," he said, his voice calm but firm, "you know the consequences of your actions. The bond between you and this human, this outsider, jeopardizes the very fabric of our society. You risk the future of Aseria by choosing to defy our ways. Do you truly believe this is worth the cost?" Elyra's gaze didn't waver. She turned slightly to glance at Ryan, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. He had stood by her through everything, even when the world around them had seemed to crumble. She looked back at the elders, her voice unwavering. "I do," she said, her words clear and full of resolve. "The future of Aseria lies in the strength of our people. But we are not defined by control alone. We are defined by the connections we forge. By the love we share, the bonds we build. That is what will make us stronger. Not fear. Not isolation. But unity." There was a heavy silence as the elders processed her words. Orin remained quiet for a long moment, his eyes narrowed, studying Elyra. Finally, he spoke. "You have always been our leader," he said slowly, as if weighing each word carefully. "But leadership is not just about strength. It is about sacrifice. Can you truly sacrifice your own desires for the good of the people? Can you lead while still embracing love, the very thing we have been taught to avoid? Elyra looked at him with an expression that was both calm and resolute. I do not see love as a sacrifice, Oren. It is not a burden, it is a gift. One that has the power to change everything. And I will lead with that truth. The room fell silent once again, and Ryan felt the weight of the moment settle over them both. It wasn't just about Elyra's decision anymore, it was about their future, the future of Aseria, and whether the elders could accept this new vision of leadership. After a long, tense pause, Oren stepped back, his silver eyes locked onto Elyra's. Very well, he said, his voice filled with reluctant acceptance. You have made your choice. And while we may not agree with it, we will not stand in your way. Aseria's future is now in your hands. The words hung in the air, a mixture of uncertainty and cautious respect. Elyra had faced the greatest challenge of her life, and now, she had won not through strength alone, but through the power of love and unity. The path ahead would not be easy, but it was theirs to walk together. Ryan stepped forward, his hand finding Elyra's. Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise that no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. Thank you, Elyra whispered, her voice full of emotion as she looked at him. Ryan smiled softly, the warmth of his touch grounding her. We're in this together, he said, his words simple but filled with meaning. Always. As they left the chamber, the weight of the world seemed to lift, if only for a moment. They had made their choice. They had chosen each other, chosen the future they would create together, and with that decision, they had embraced their destiny. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, they were no longer alone. In that final moment, when the space between us was no more than a speck of light in the vast ocean of stars, I realized something: love doesn't need explanation. Sometimes, the things that defy logic are the ones that last forever. And in that moment, we stayed together, crossing every boundary the universe could throw at us. We faced every challenge, every impossible test, but in the end, I realized something far more important. It wasn't about where he came from. It was about where our love would take us. And what I thought was the end, was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where every question led to another, and every moment became more precious than the last. So, where does love truly come from? Could it be that we've only scratched the surface of the incredible possibilities the universe holds? Will we continue to search for love in other galaxies, or is that just an illusion? We may never know. But together, we've started a journey of discovery, and we want you to join us. If you're ready to explore more stories like this, stories that reach across space, time, and everything in between, make sure to subscribe to Intergalactic Hearts. Join the conversation, share your thoughts, and let's discover the infinite possibilities of love, together. You, my friend, are one of the first 1,000 explorers in this cosmic adventure. And with every story we share, you'll be one step closer to discovering the heart of the universe. Together, forever. The connection they shared, the bond that had grown between them, was more than just a love between two beings from different worlds. It was a force of healing, of transformation. And whatever came next, Ava knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't face it alone. As the stars faded behind us, and the silence of the universe engulfed us, I realized something so profound that it left me breathless. Love doesn't need to be explained sometimes, it exists beyond the confines of reason, beyond the stars, where everything seems impossible. In the final moment, when the space between us was reduced to nothing more than a tiny point of light in the universe, I realized, love is not just something you search for. It's something you feel. And there, in that moment, I understood. Love is a force beyond understanding, beyond barriers, beyond time and space. It transcends worlds. It transcends boundaries. And just like that, we were together. But did it end there? Or was this just the beginning of something much larger? I felt that the universe was still full of mysteries, yet to be discovered mysteries that could lead us to new worlds, new hearts, new beginnings. And that journey, that adventure, is something I will never stop exploring. Love knows no borders. Could it truly come from the stars? Could we, as humans, find our hearts not just in the realms of Earth, but across galaxies? Or is this just the beginning of a much deeper exploration, where we may one day find love in places we least expect? The answer, maybe, is out there, hidden somewhere in the vastness of space. But one thing is for sure, the journey never ends. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, hit that subscribe button and join us on this extraordinary adventure of the heart. Comment below, what do you think about love beyond the stars? Do you think the heart can truly find its match in the cosmos? Subscribe to Intergalactic Hearts and be one of the first 1,000 to join this journey. You'll be among the chosen few who get to explore the deepest corners of the universe with us. Together, let's discover what it means to love without limits.